in New York. The Gold Cup was born. The Standard, 59 feet long, won that race with a speed of 23.16 miles an hour. The boats in those days were wide-beamed. They used 110 horsepower automobile engines. There was another Gold Cup race that year, and for the next 13 years, the Gold Cup race stayed in New York. Then it moved to the Midwest, and starting in 1917, Gar Wood became the first superstar in the sport. In 1920, he set a new record of 70.412 miles an hour. In the middle of the late 30s, there were two-man boats. One man drove, and one ran the engine. In 1939, they added sponsons, but Gar Wood's record of 70.412 continued to hold. The race wasn't held during the Second World War. When the war ended, airplane engines revolutionized boats and speeds. But bandleader Guy Lombardo in the Tempo 6 won the first post-war Gold Cup. It was an automobile engine that he used and set a new world record of 70.890 miles an hour. In the 1950s, they built the first prop rider and three-point suspension hulls that were capable of speeds well over 150 miles an hour. Well, the rest is history. Hydroplane dynasties have put names on the Gold Cup like Billy Shoemaker, Lee Shaniff, and the late Ron Musson, Bill Munsey, and Dean Chenoweth. And today we'll etch another name on the Gold Cup as from the shores of the Ohio River in Evansville, Indiana, Sports World welcomes you to the 75th running of the Gold Cup. And the hot sun shines down on the 2-mile course laid out here in the bend of the Ohio. 90,000 people are now lining the banks, ready to see who will become the next champion. Hello, I'm Paul Page, and we've come a long way since that first victory in Standard. The object? A small Tiffany Gold Cup that represents the pinnacle of achievement for the hydroplane racer. Now, there are some great names etched on the base of that cup: Gar Wood, bandleader Guy Lombardo, Bill Munsey, and Dean Chenoweth. And the rivalry continues here today that we've seen for the past several years between the Miss Budweiser and the Miss Atlas van lines. They are both looking for the first ever 6th victory in a Gold Cup competition. The leading driver in the sport right now is young Chip Hanauer. He's last year's Gold Cup champion. And right now, Gary Gerald is in his pit.
Paul, it was just a year ago that Chip Hanauer in this boat turned in a breathtaking ride on the choppy waters of the Detroit River as he held off the determined challenge of the late Dean Chenoweth to win his first ever Gold Cup, continuing a great tradition for this boat established by the late Bill Munsey. Not only did he win the Gold Cup, he went on to win the national championship. And already this weekend here in Evansville, a new world record on a 2-mile closed course, average speed better than 133 miles per hour. Clearly, Hanauer is ready for a second run at the gold. The prime competition from a longtime rival at the other end of the pits, Johnny Rutherford, is alongside.
Gary, I'm standing in the pits by a boat whose name is synonymous with Gold Cup racing, Miss Budweiser. This boat has 6 national championships and 5 Gold Cups to its credit, most of those being won by the late Dean Chenoweth, one of the star drivers of hydroplane racing. Jim Kropfeld, its new driver, hopes today to add to his credit his first ever Gold Cup. Incidentally, Chip Hanauer has never beaten Jim Kropfeld in a race. But they both have the rest of the field to contend with.
That's right, John, and one of them is the Miss Renault, piloted by Milner Irvin. It's a new design. It was merely a piece of paper on a drawing board last November. It's powered by a twin-turbo Allison, but the rear wing is right down on the deck of the boat. And another that we always keep an eye on, the longest continuing ownership of a boat in hydroplane racing, the Miss Madison, owned by the community of Madison, Indiana. It's a twin-turbo Allison, the motor up front, and it'll be piloted by Ron Snyder. Here's some of the action of the earlier heats of the day. In the first heat, it was Chip Hanauer coming down to the line in a perfect start. The butt on the inside, Kropfeld taking a run on him, pours on the nitrous. And the battle, this classic confrontation, already begun as Kropfeld powers his way past the Atlas and leads going into the first turn.
Paul, this is a critical test for Hanauer and the Atlas because they had a problem yesterday. They sheared a prop in the last qualifying session. They damaged the rudder, the underside of the boat. When they warmed up this morning, the boat was not handling well. They've been making changes before every run. So right now, this is a very critical moment to try to get the boat right if they qualify for the final heat.
Jim Kropfeld, a 1982 Rookie of the Year in this magnificent craft, a Griffon-powered boat, now out in front and beginning to pull away from Hanauer.
Paul, you know, the course here is not unlike our Michigan International Raceway we run the Indy cars on, and it is the same length. It's a D shape, the D bend around the front straightaway, and it's 2 miles in length.
Chip Hanauer now trying to catch Kropfeld in the Bud. The Bud, a boat with a great tradition, a tradition that doesn't come cheaply. Bernie Little is the owner.
I got to the 8th grade in school, and I'm not bragging about that, but had a lot of problems, had to go to work, and I still work 12, 14 hours a day, and I'm 57 years old, and I don't know any different. 21 years ago, August Bush III saw our unlimited hydroplane in Tampa, Florida, and I talked to him about sponsoring it, and they was very interested. He wanted to take a ride in it. He did. He came to the first race, and we never even got into the race. But when he saw the crowds and the people there, he felt that it would be a very good thing to get into. I'm very fortunate to say that in 21 years I've never missed a race, and there's never been a Miss Budweiser that wasn't in a race in those 21 years. And I'll knock on wood, but needless to say, in 21 years, it's not too hard to spend $1 million a year in boat racing the way we go racing. The engine in that boat, I just flew it in a 747 from Seattle. So needless to tell you that we're here to win this race, and we don't go to run second.
Jim Kropfeld in the Bud, currently running with the Little philosophy. He is out in front. Hanauer still in a desperate pursuit in second place.
Well, you know, Paul, Chip Hanauer running in second probably is still having problems from the incident they had yesterday when the prop broke, knocking off the rudder. They'll be busy trying to get it ready for the next race.
In the final lap now, Kropfeld still leading Hanauer, and they have well outdistanced the rest of the boats in the heat.
We should point out that these are the 5 fastest qualifiers from the field here at Evansville. The Atlas with that world record of better than 133 miles per hour. The Bud at 126.5. Currently running third, Jack Schaefer Jr. in the American Speedy Printing 2. He qualified at 118. The Rich Planner, Miss Madison with Ron Snyder, qualified at better than 123. And rounding out the field, Milner Irvin in the Renault that qualified at nearly 120 miles per hour.
Unchallenged now, Kropfeld making his final turn in and on to the main stretch as he heads for the checkered flag and victory in the first heat of the day. Across the line behind him, Chip Hanauer still in pursuit. Hanauer still has not, in a head-to-head battle, beaten Kropfeld on the course. So it's the Bud out in front. Hanauer, the defending champion, comes in second. Here's the battle now for third place as Jack Schaefer holds it off against Ron Snyder. Can he hold it to the line? Indeed he does. Schaefer in third, Snyder in fourth, and Milner Irvin comes across the line in fifth place. So that battle sets the stage exactly as we expected, a showdown between the Bud and the Atlas. As the countdown continues and the preparation continues for the Gold Cup run itself, let's look at the second heat of the day.
Every one of the drivers will tell you how important the start is on any one of these events. And clearly, Hanauer this time immediately ready. He had the inside line, gunning down there, achieving much more speed than we saw in the earlier heat, getting a tremendous jump this time on Kropfeld and the Bud. Now, they said earlier, Paul, that they were about 10 miles down on the speed they'd hoped to achieve. They've been working on the rudder. They worked on the setup of the boat. It appears that whatever Jim Lucero, Jim Harvey, and the rest of the crew have done for the Atlas, it has worked to perfection because Hanauer is really storming this 2-mile course.
Hanauer now leading Kropfeld, and these two men, an interesting study in contrast. Hanauer is incredibly serious about this sport. Long mental preparation before he comes into a race. On the other hand, Kropfeld says he has a great deal of fun with it. Does very little mental preparation whatsoever.
We watched him get through the corner that time. Earlier, Hanauer was saying that it was taking about an extra 50 pounds of pressure, he thought, to turn the boat to the left. It appeared that time that he was able to wheel that boat through the corner much easier than he did in that first heat we saw.
And as we watch Hanauer in the Atlas leading Kropfeld in the Bud, we are seeing two different kinds of engines. Off the basic same design, but two distinct power plants here, Johnny Rutherford.
Yes, the Griffon engine is much larger than the Merlin engine that's in Miss Atlas, and of course with that extra power, it's hard to believe that Budweiser is running in second, but Chip Hanauer is doing a fantastic job with Atlas way out in front. Atlas has something new this year, and I had a chance to talk with Chip about it.
Chip, something's a little different with Atlas this year. The cockpit arrangement is somewhat different. You want to tell me a little bit about it?
Well, let me back up and say what we used to do was the philosophy of throwing the driver out of the boat. If we had an accident, we always thought that the driver was to be thrown clear, which is all well and good if indeed the driver's thrown clear. But the percentage of time the driver's going to be thrown into a worse situation. So really we took a lesson from you guys in Indianapolis and decided to make a cockpit in a boat to absorb the energy. Much like you guys hitting a wall and the car coming apart, we want to keep the driver in the boat, let the boat absorb the energy, and hopefully save the driver. And the way we've done that has lowered me down inside the boat, where last year my head was above the engine. Now I'm about 14 inches below it. We replaced what this used to be a fiberglass cowling, and now I've replaced it with honeycomb aluminum, and is virtually the strongest place in the boat. So I've got some real protection around me. And to take advantage of all this protection, of course, I'm using seat belts to stay in the boat long enough to survive the crash.
You're the first one that's used seat belts in a number of years, if at all.
It's hard to accept change. People, you know, we always went by the old philosophy, and to get someone to try something new is difficult. But now that I have the new cockpit and the belts, I don't think I'd drive an unlimited boat without them.
Do you like it that much better?
I really do. You know, now I can use my arms to drive the boat. Without seat belts, we had a tight-fitting seat, and I was using my arms to stay in the boat as well as drive the boat. Now I can relax my arms, use it to make fine steering wheel adjustments, and I just end the race a lot more relaxed.
I notice you have a quick-release steering wheel that you can take off. That's something new.
Yeah, if the boat is upside down and the drivers need to get me out, if the cockpit is collapsed and they need more room to get me out, they can simply take out the steering wheel. That gives them much more room to get my body clear of the cockpit. And then the seatbelt system is the same system you have in your Indianapolis car. It's a Simpson system where you just pull one lever and the belts just simply come free.
Since the passing of Dean Chenoweth and Bill Munsey in the past 2 years, the Unlimited Racing Commission has been examining this situation of safety. And this cockpit is one of the first attempts to try and increase the safety margin for these drivers. Now, Chip Hanauer starts his last lap. He is still being chased by Cropfeld. Hanauer's crew has been working constantly on the boat, trying to put it back in racing shape after the damage it received yesterday. Jim Lucero has been grinding away at the rudder, and they now report that they have replaced back to about 90% of the boat's original capacity. And Chip Hanauer is leading Cropfeld in this second heat.
Incidentally, the rudder on the Atlas was borrowed from the Squire shop. Earl Hall and his crew, Jerry Zubich and them, being very gracious, and the spirit of sportsmanship certainly prevailing as the Atlas now thundering along here on the Ohio, well in command of this second heat.
Only a few hundred yards now for Chip Hanauer as Hanauer wins the second heat. And it's Cropfeld that will come in second as Cropfeld heads for the line. So now Hanauer has actually beaten Cropfeld in a head-to-head match. In third place, Ron Snyder, Jack Schaefer in fourth, and Milner Irvin in fifth.
And not only is this the first time that Hanauer has beaten Cropfeld when both boats were running, it's the first time that the Bud has been beaten in any heat thus far this season.
They've now split the heats 1-1. It's a great setup for the Gold Cup. The final seconds now being counted on the Ohio River for the 75th running of the Gold Cup. This is Paul Page with Gary Gerald and Johnny Rutherford as each boat maneuvers for position for the start.
Paul, they have to get down. They want to be fully on the throttle at top speed as they come by, but they cannot jump the gun. If you get there ahead of the clock, you're penalized one full lap.
The run for the line now. Hanauer has dropped back just a bit as Cropfeld appears to be making a perfect attempt at the start. The clock closing. They come to the line, and Cropfeld comes right on the mark. And we're racing with 6 laps to go in the Gold Cup.
Cropfeld has to be one of the best starters in the business. This guy can look at that. Look at that. The boat leaping in the air, jumping. He is really on it, Paul.
Cropfeld hits the nitrous, comes across the line just perfectly around the first and second turn. It's Hanauer in pursuit.
Spectacular shots of the giant rooster tails being kicked up by these huge airplane engines. Thousands of horsepower at work here, tons of water in the air, and of course you get out in front, you don't have to worry about being washed down by another boat.
Jack Schaefer and Ron Snyder follow up in third and fourth place, but it's Cropfeld well out in front now. You can see the offset cab of the Budweiser. It comes around, completing lap number 1. 5 to go in the Gold Cup. Hanauer still chasing.
That offset chassis really looks like it's paying off here because he's able to get through the turns quite fast, Paul, and that's what it's all about, getting around the quickest.
The Griffon engine roars as Cropfeld continues to put distance between himself and the second-place boat of the defending championship, Hanauer.
Well, Cropfeld won the first heat comfortably today. Hanauer came back and won the second. The determination from Cropfeld, the entire Bernie Little crew in evidence as they have really stormed out. In fact, we're seeing, I think, speed probably very, very close to records for a 2-mile course, Paul.
Nitrous oxide being poured into that engine on the straightaways by a button on the steering wheel in Cropfeld's boat, and that substantially increases the horsepower. Now, in that new cab of Chip Hanauer's boat, he doesn't have the button on the steering wheel like his predecessor, Bill Munsey, did. He's using a button down at his left foot to add that extra horsepower as now he roars onto the straightaway.
Well, of course, Paul, being tied into the boat with the seatbelt system, he would be able to use his feet to do this job. Otherwise, he'd be bouncing around quite a bit. And I think here we see the 2,240 cubic inches of that Griffon in Miss Budweiser going to work and putting it out.
The first 2 laps of 4 miles now complete on this course here at Evansville. The first time that the Gold Cup has been contested here at Evansville, the first time on a 2-mile course. And what does Jim Cropfeld, our leader, think about the course?
A 2-mile course, I love it. The Unlimiteds over the years, they've run on 2.5 and 3-mile courses, and I don't like those big long straightaways. I don't like going 175 mile an hour on the straightaways. I would rather go 135 in a turn and just hold it at 135 all day long.
Johnny Rutherford, most of the other drivers agree. They like the short course.
Well, I think that's probably universal, Paul, because in auto racing, it's the same way. I personally like a short course. It is more of a test. It's a brake pulling contest, I call it. You can go down the straightaways, get into the turn, and it's very close-quartered racing, and that's the kind I like, and obviously it's what these guys like.
Well, Cropfeld, Miss Bud working perfectly today. Look at the distance between the lead boat and this, the second-place boat of Chip Hanauer, the defending champion.
It's hard to believe, Paul, that Cropfeld is actually a rookie. This is his first Gold Cup race. The first lap speed we have now, better than 129 miles per hour. He's seeking to become the first rookie to win a Gold Cup since Ted Jones in the slow motion back in 1950. That's more than 30 years ago.
And remember, too, in this rivalry between the two boats, they are both trying for an unprecedented 6th victory in the Gold Cup.
Coming off of the 4th turn, Paul, he's headed for the completion of the 4th lap. And, you know, it'll be interesting to see here if he eases up a little bit with the lead he has, because he has run faster in the race than he qualified.
Now, the Atlas still in pursuit. It's a desperate attempt now as the Bud well out in front. Chip Hanauer having the job of chasing, but it seems that with just 4 miles to go, he will come home now in second place. But there's a hesitation on the Bud. The Bud's slowing. The Bud's slowing completely. The engine is shut down. It's Hanauer on the charge as the Bud slows. Can Cropfeld get it restarted? Hanauer now closing the distance. And Hanauer goes past and into the lead. He had no chance just a few seconds ago, and now the Bud stops in the water.
A dramatic turn of events now as Chip Hanauer in the Atlas is looking at a possible second consecutive Gold Cup win. No sign of engine life yet down there with Cropfeld and the Bud. It still rides in the water. The rest of the field roaring by. We don't know if it was an engine failure, perhaps accounted by the extreme high temperatures here today, or just what went wrong. But Chip Hanauer is the brand new leader with just over a lap to go.
What a terrible development for Cropfeld. Wanting to win his very first Gold Cup, now his chances are gone. Being dead in the water that long, I would say that it's something amiss in the engine, and he probably won't get back in, which also means he will not get any points in this heat.
The 29-year-old defending champion, Chip Hanauer, who has won on the Evansville course before, appears now to be on his way to victory. Here is the American Speedy Prince. Jack Schaefer, the driver, moves into second place.
And moving up to take over the number 3 spot, here's the Squire. Remember, that's the heaviest boat in the competition. Earl Hall, the rookie driver from Virginia, now in that 3rd position. They're chasing Hanauer.
There's Jack Schaefer, and right behind him, Earl Hall, the 1982 7-liter champion in pursuit. A battle for second place as the Squire tries to catch up. But this boat well out in front as Chip Hanauer, at 29 years old, the senior man in the sport, appears well on his way to his 2nd Gold Cup in a row, and the first time a boat has completed 6 Gold Cup championships.
Well, a year ago, we saw Hanauer outduel Dean Chenoweth coming down to the checkered flag. This time, after the bud goes dead in the water, here comes Hanauer off the final turn. The roar of the crowd along the banks of the Ohio, cheering him on as the checkered flag is out.
And Hanauer has done it. The checkered flag, 2 in a row. The Gold Cup, the 75th time, belongs to Hanauer.
And coming down to finish second, Jack Schaefer Jr. from Southern California. And Paul, a great story here as Bob Taylor, a newcomer to this sport and a team that's been assembled in less than a month, gets a runner-up finish in the 1983 Gold Cup.
Cropfeld and Miss Budweiser in the water, and there's nothing left for Jim but the long ride back to the pits behind the towboat.
But Chip Hanauer pulls around the Bud and has cut the course short. So Hanauer, last year we remember being jubilant to win at the Gold Cup, is sitting very quietly in the cockpit. He did not take his victory lap. The crew is standing by, but Hanauer not nearly as happy with his victory as he was 1 year ago. Now the crew jumps on top of the boat. Perhaps there is something wrong. This is unlike Hanauer at a victory. Last year he jumped up and down. Now there is Cropfeld, his boat now under tow as they bring him back into the dock. Gary Gerald, can you give us a further report on Hanauer?
Well, we thought at first it might be heat exhaustion or something related to the heat, but Hanauer refused oxygen. Then we've gotten a word from the crew member that apparently he was washed down or got some water. There was damage to the visor on his helmet. We can see some cuts around the bridge of his nose, and he's very woozy as they prepare now to step from the boat onto the dock. As soon as we can get alongside Chip and the medical officials give their okay, we'll get a word directly from him.
We'll be right back. Right here. As we take a look at the Atlas, we can see there is damage to the boat. There's also the report of injury to the driver. Here's Gary Gerald.
Well, Paul, the culmination of a most unusual finish here in the Gold Cup. Here's the man. You provided all of us with some very anxious moments. Obviously, you appear to be okay at this point, Chip.
Yeah, I'm all right. I got my bell rung a little bit, but I'm fine.
Can you tell us what happened?
One of the other boats at the start took my lane away from me. It was only about a foot in front of me, so the water coming off that boat is like, 100 fire hoses, and it took my face shield and crashed it into my face. So I had to run the race without a face shield and a little blood up inside there. I couldn't see very well. Without the face shield at 180, you just can't open your eyes. And basically I was using the Bud to find my way around the race course, and that's all I could do. I couldn't get a good shot at him at the start because getting hit in the head. So I was just very fortunate that the crew gave me a boat that would stay together.
Jim, what happened?
Well, I'm not sure, John. It quit on me down the turn, and after coming back in and talking to a few people, you even said that you heard a bang as I went down in there, which I didn't notice. I was trying to restart it, and I thought maybe I had maybe a little air in the fuel line or something, but I couldn't get it started. So it looks like the supercharger drive broke.
Is there any consolation other than the fact that you were leading when it dropped out?
No, not much consolation, although I'm proud to be able to, each time I drive the boat, we seem to be able to break a course record. We've done it every course that we've finished this year, so I'm kind of proud of that. But, as you know and everybody else knows, the checkered flag's the name of the game.
Well, there's the Gold Cup. Attached to its base are 74 gold plates with the names of the former champions. They will now add, once again, Chip Hanauer. This is Paul Page with Gary Gerald and Johnny Rutherford. So long from the Gold Cup in Evansville, Indiana.